Hey, how was your weekend? Mine was pretty good. Welcome to the Superpilotish channel. My name's Graham Wilson, and today I'm going to be talking about how I spent my weekend in my basement. But I didn't spend my weekend just in my basement. I went flying on Saturday, and it was a really nice day. So I went flying up in a plane that sort of looks like this one here, but yeah, I went up in a the DHC-1 de Havilland Chipmunk. It's an old training airplane that the the British Air Force used to use it, or Royal Air Force, I guess, and the Canadian Air Force used it, and it was kind of designed around, the end of 1940s, and it served through the 50s and stuff, and they got rid of them, and I went flying in a plane that looks like that. But I'm just gonna wipe this out. It's a tail wheel airplane, and that's nothing too weird. But there's a few other weird things that I kind of got used to. It was my second flight that I ever did in it on the weekend, and yeah, so it was just kind of a getting acquainted with a new plane. Anytime you get into a new airplane, especially one that's a bit older, the things weren't as standardized back in the day, and so you're kind of getting used to a new way of thinking, I guess. I would equate that. I would equate that to, let's say you learn how to drive in a what's a normal car? Chevy Cavalier, automatic. Okay, and then you go and you get into a three on the tree Fargo van from 1969. It's like, okay, you're licensed to drive it, but it's I don't know. Did Fargo's have a three on the tree? But anyways, hey Jim, the yeah. So it was just a few weird little things, and I thought I would kind of bring them up. And we'll just start. I'm gonna do another five because YouTube likes the fives. Five. Okay, here we go. We're gonna start off. We got the whiteboard here. And we just we'll say funny quirks or funny little things. We'll say funny quirks. How's that sound? Funny quirks. Yeah, so this is it's an old plane, and it's at the Canadian Aviation Museum in Windsor. And yeah, so people can, if you're ever in Windsor, you can go check them out, and people, you might be able to get a flight up in one. It's a pretty cool museum. Just go through and check it out. It's a bunch of old retired guys there, and they're kind of restoring some planes. There's a Mosquito bomber that they're restoring, and Lancaster bomber, and a few other planes that are in there. It's a lot of old guys putting in a lot of time and effort into this, and they do a good job. So, okay, I'm going to start off with the funniest, weird little quirky thing about this older airplane. I don't know exactly the year of the one that I was flying. It was in the 50s, anyways. 53, I think. Don't quote me on that. So, anyways, okay. What do we got here? Okay, we'll just start off here. The weirdest thing, and this isn't in any particular order. I got five that I thought of. Okay, so for the gauges, when you're inside, there's no six pack. So a few years ago, I don't know exactly when, I think it was in about the 70s, that there's six main gauges that a pilot looks at. And they kind of decided, everyone kind of decided to standardize the position of those on your instrument panel. And they call it the six pack. It's your standard six instruments that tell you everything you need to know about flying. And now they've, with newer airplanes and jets, you'll see it's kind of like a little video screen there. And so they squish all those six instruments into like one screen. And the technology now is pretty amazing for that. But I've always flown on a plane with your standard six pack gauges, and this whole plane didn't have that. So you're used to thinking, oh, where's the airspeed? You got to kind of thinking, oh, there it is, or the RPM is here. So it takes you a couple. You pick it up relatively quickly, but it's a weird one. And just in general, the layout of the airplane. We'll see what else here. Like, so, okay. They will say this here too. The mixture knob. So it's when you're in an airplane. When you're in an airplane, because the as you go up higher, the air gets thinner, so you don't want is the same amount of gas going into the carburetor of the airplane, or the if it's fuel injected. Anyways, you still have to have this proper air fuel mixture. So if it's you go up in the air, you have to like because there's less oxygen molecules there, you got to limit the amount of gas going in there to keep that mixture. If that air fuel ratio correct. And if you don't do that, you'll start to, the engine might start running a little rough till you tweak it out. So the mixture is a little weird on that one. And you can't totally shut it off like other airplanes, normal little airplanes. When you're flying, you just pull the little mixture knob there and it shuts off all the fuel to the engine and then it stops. But they actually have like a special little plunger over on the right that you pull and that shuts it off. So it's the mixture was weird. The gauges are weird. The overall layout is strange. And this is one I've never seen before. Okay. Okay. Well, the mags on it. So magnetos. Airplanes run with. They get their spark from a magneto, just like your lawnmower does, and rather than from a battery. That way, if your battery goes dead, the engine will still run. So. But on this whole plane, there's because you said the pilot sits in the front, the instructor sits in the back, and there's a way for they just have these two little toggle switches kind of thing, and that turns your magnetos on or off. And there's someone in the back could do that too. Like you could be flying around, and that's the way they would do engine failures back in the old days. The instructor would just turn off the engine from the back seat and you just flip these little switches. So you got to be careful about that. So anyways, just a weird way. So you flip these magnetos on and then you hit the starter button and then the engine starts. So just the overall layout and everything was really strange. But you do get used to it. So that was hour number 2 for me flying in that plane. And I'll be getting checked out on it eventually. And eventually I'm going to do a video of me actually flying it because I don't really have any flying videos here too much, but this summer I'm going to get into that a little bit more. And I also don't want a camera in the cockpit to detract from the training. That's just my own personal little thing. Okay, this other is the braking system on these things. So I'll talk about the braking system on the Chipmunk. It actually has a handbrake. So I've flown in a plane before. It was an older Cherokee, and it had a handbrake, but it also had a steerable nose wheel on there. So the brakes usually on airplanes, what you do is like they have these two little rudder pedals on the ground. You press the right rudder pedal down, it'll steer the front wheel, but this one's a tail dragger, so it doesn't do that. And there's also like a little brake pedal on top of each rudder one, so you can activate each brake independently on your right and left wheels. Well, this airplane is kind of an older design, and it's got this funny handbrake that you pull, and depending on how your feet are on the rudder pedals, it'll use differential pressure. Like say you got it all the way to the floor with your right rudder pedal, then you pull the handbrake and it only activates the right brake. If you bring the if you bring the rudder pedals back to neutral right in the middle and you hit the brake, it'll activate both of the brakes at the same time. So it's really it's really weird to taxi like that and to land. And so that's going to take a little getting used to with that handbrake. If you're landing, if you need to use that to counteract for a crosswind, it's not really intuitive for me yet, but I'll be getting there. So that's a weird one about the handbrake. I've heard, don't quote me on it again, but I have heard that the old Tiger Moths, they used to have that too. That was a World War II trainer, old biplane. Okay, what else we got to do now as far as flying the airplane? this other weird number 3 we got. Yeah, so the designers of this airplane, they decided to, when they mounted the engine, they didn't mount the engine straight down the fuselage. They actually have, it's a 4-degree cant on the engine. So the engine's actually on an angle to make it harder for you to fly it. And they did that on purpose so that when you got into your bigger, you're getting into your Mustangs and Spitfires and, the Sea Furies and stuff like that, then you're really used to using a lot of rudder. So they purposely made it harder to fly that way. And so another weird thing about it is that the propeller on the airplane, like usually on a regular plane, if you're sitting in the pilot seat, the propeller goes clockwise in relationship to the pilot. But for the Chipmunk, it goes the opposite way. So when you're taking off, usually you need some right rudder to keep it all nice and coordinated. But on a Chipmunk, you use the left rudder. So that's a little bit weird. And also when you're descending too, okay, so if you take off, you're going to use the left rudder. And then if you're going to descend, like when you're coming into land, you'll use the right rudder pedal. See if I can get this here. All right. So if you're descending, you'll notice the ball is off to the right. That's totally any other little plane I've ever flown. That just doesn't really happen. So, and no, Jim, it doesn't have any air brakes like Bugs Bunny. Yeah. So, anyways, so that's a funny handling characteristic of the airplane that you really gotta. I mean, I guess you don't really think about it too much. You just always want to keep that ball in the middle of your turn coordinator, and you might have to use that foot. You might have to use that foot. But just keep the ball in the middle, and you're all good. You're nice and coordinated. Another thing that I also didn't mention, which is weird. I'm not going to write it down, but it just popped into my head. Where can I put here? Gauges. No 6-pack mixture bags. Another thing about the layout. Okay, we're going to go back out of order here. But I should mention this. Uh-oh. Okay, right at the bottom here. Because I was thinking when I'm coming into land, there's the old plane doesn't have a stall warning horn on it. Most airplanes will have like a little now modern airplanes will have some audible signal that says like, hey, you're getting close to where your wing's not flying. And so this one doesn't have that. So when you're coming in, you just go and land, you don't hear a ee. Some other ones have they'll have a little light that says stall. But yeah, this whole plane is just like you got to really watch your airspeed so you don't, because there's nothing there to remind you. And that's probably why they put in these little warnings and reminders, because people are, having accidents. And okay, let's wake up the pilot here. You're getting too slow, bud. Okay, so that was something I had to add in there. I don't know. Another part of it that sort of has to do with the layout and design of it is the fuel gauges. So the fuel gauges are in imperial gallons, and there's no fuel gauge in the cockpit. You have to look out the window at the wing, and there's like a little round gauge there, and you'll see this little needle bouncing around there, pointing at the amount of imperial gallons that you have in that tank, and it bounces around. So you kind of take the middle of it, say, okay, I got about 7 gallons there. And it's also got 2 different settings so that when you're filling up, because I had to put gas in the plane before we went flying on Saturday, and so when the plane's sitting there, it's not in the attitude that you would be flying when you're flying. It's like nice and straight, so the nose is up a bit. So that means the fuel sloshes back in the tank, and there's a separate ring of numbers there that you fill that up. So there's like a ground measurement for a little float in there, and then an air measurement for it. So the fuel gauges are weird, and the way they're positioned is kind of the way the cockpit is. You gotta really get your head up against the window to see what they are, and you'd never be able to see them at night. So that's why they're not certified for night flying. Now, the biggest, weirdest one here. Okay. The engine. Here we go. You can talk about these British engines. It's a British designed engine from way back in the 30s, or I don't know, maybe 20s even. It's an oddball, weirdo engine. Gypsy Major engine is what it's called. And yeah, I'll just make a few notes on this too. Like I mentioned before, if you're sitting in the pilot seat, it is going counterclockwise instead of clockwise. So that looks a little bit different. And you know how it's an inline four cylinder engine, kind of front to back, not like your transverse inline four engines that the little cars have these days. Oh, I wrote it too big. Oh well. And the cylinders are actually upside down. So on my BMW motorcycle, just like the most airplanes, they have horizontally opposed pistons. They go like that, and it's air cooled. This is also an air cooled engine. So the back cylinder probably isn't getting cooled as much as the front cylinder on it. But it still does a pretty good job there. But it's the crankshaft is on the top of the engine. Actually, you know what? I'm going double whiteboard here, boys. Boom. Bringing out the secondary whiteboard to draw the engine. So this is how does this go? Okay. So it's got an inline four upside down. So let's make a propeller. Isn't that a good looking propeller? Oh yeah. And then we're going to draw, it's going to attach to the crankshaft, which goes through the engine. Okay, this isn't exactly the perfect one, but we're going to, let's see how this works. All right. There's your engine. It looks like some kind of, like, I don't know, a mutant elephant or something. But anyways, this is that rudimentary drawing here. This is the, yeah, so that's your propeller there, and that goes around. That attaches to the crankshaft here. And so that has the connecting rods go off the cylinders, which are down here. Yeah, this is, I'm going to make an actual engineering drawing off of this one. Okay, that looks pretty cluttered, but maybe you'll get the idea. So you got your cylinders going down here. So all your intake and exhaust valves would be like at the bottom. And then you got your the connecting rods here go up to the crankshaft, and your pistons 1, 2, 3, 4. Your pistons they're moving up and down. So same thing with if you ever flown in a plane with a radial engine. Before you start it, you have to pull it through by hand because what happens is oil can pool down here at the very end, and then oil doesn't compress, right? So if it fires, and it can blow the heads off. So what you do before you start it is you pull it through by hand. Make sure the magnetos are off, and you're pulling it through by hand. You want to go through 4 compression strokes. So and you can feel it when you're pulling the propeller. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, there's no oil in there. Then you can go in the plane and start it up. So it's a little bit I don't know. I guess a little more thinking, a little bit more. I guess it's a little bit more responsibility on the pilot to fly something older like that. You just over the years they take that responsibility and the stuff that you have to remember. They kind of built it in so you don't have to think about it as much. So newer planes are a little more intuitive that way. So, and yeah, Jim here says he heard the radial engines were like fill the oil, check the gas. Yeah. Radial engines do burn. Those old radials, they use a lot of oil. But this one here, it uses quite a bit of oil too. It's I had to put a liter in, or a quart, or whatever. 946 milliliters. So anyways, yeah, so it uses up quite a bit of oil there too. Probably, they say, I haven't seen it myself, but about 1 liter every time you gas it up. So probably every couple hours it uses a liter of oil, a quart of oil. And it's, a big old sloppy old engine. Just everything's all loosey goosey there. But that's one of the things. Even newer engines for airplanes, they still use quite a bit of oil compared to something like your car. The thinking there is that if everything's all low compression and loosey goosey, that if it'll last longer, it'll be a lot more reliable. The whole thing about airplane engines is they're not optimized for easy starting. They're not optimized for fuel efficiency. They're optimized for reliability, because you want it to run when you're up in the air. So there we go. That's what a Chipmunk engine looks like. There's your Gypsy Major engine. And so you're thinking, well, if you can't have the oil here, where you have the oil? Well, you have a dry sump oil system over here. You got a little tank of oil. There you go. There's your oil tank. Right there. Here. In that little circle, that's where I put the oil in it. Yeah. And so it kind of goes and splashes up and down. Splashes up and down there and gets everything all lubricated. So yeah, there we go. That's a good looking. It's like my little mutant. My mutant elephant's got a big tail on the end or something. But anyways, yeah. So it's a weird kind of engine there. It's upside down. It's got a dry sump. It's old and loosey goosey, and just like every other old airplane, it leaks oil. It's almost impossible to. I was thinking about that too, about how older planes leak oil. We had a leak once, and in even some newer airplanes, you'd think that they would have some real high tech technology to even nowadays, to keep oil from leaking out of a airplane engine. But this one plane we had, the place I was flying at, okay, the crankcase was split in two halves, and so you'd basically get one half bolted together. Whoa, losing my pen here. Bolted to the other half of the crankcase of it, and in between, as a seal, because it's going to be oil splashing all around in there. What they did was they just put a piece of string there, just like a little. I don't know how many string here, but like smaller than a shoelace, a little tiny little piece of string, and then just squished this string in there. And there wasn't any fancy gasket material or aluminum that would deform or anything like that. They just stuck a piece of string in there, and that was still the way that they kept the engine case or crankcase together. So yeah, very weird. But that's airplane engines. That's your Gypsy Major. And as far as flying it goes, I didn't crash it, so that's good. And that was a lot of fun. And just kind of taking a little trip back in time to the way that older planes used to fly and everything. But it was still a really nice. I got a bunch of good landings in there, and it was my second flight as a tail dragger pilot. And all my landings were pretty safe, and I thought they were pretty good. But yeah, going to be doing that a little bit more, and then getting some videos out on that. So, do I really need to? Yeah, what the heck? We'll do a little review, because I always like doing that. Okay. What is weird again about the Chipmunk? All right, here we go. Gauges, layout, just the way it is. Okay, the instruments, it's not in a 6-pack layout. It's wherever they decided to put it. The mixture knob is weird. The mags are weird. There's no stall warning horn. Okay, get used to that handbrake. That took a little while, but I think by the end of my flight, I pretty much got it. For taxiing, I got it down. But I think to get it and incorporate that into landings, if you need it with a strong crosswind, that'll take a little more work. But what else we got here? Opposite engine gives you takeoff. You need your left rudder. Descending, you need the right rudder to keep the ball in the middle, to keep it coordinated. Fuel gauges are weird and wobbly out on the wings. Okay, the engine runs counterclockwise from the pilot side, or pilot's view. And it's upside down like my weird elephant that I drew, and it's got a dry sump oil system. And there we go. So a little bit different. So That's about it. And what I'm gonna do is, after this is all done, I'm gonna put a link in the description below, to if anybody that knows any, or anyone that gets into YouTube and starts watching airplane stuff. It's You'll find out. Oh, hey Jordan, hey Shecky, thanks for popping in. Yeah, so there's a guy named Steve Thorne. He's got this really popular YouTube channel called Flight Chops, and he was basically I was kind of looking through, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Steve made a video of the same type of plane that I was flying, and it was even at the same place. So I'm gonna put a link to the Flight Chops video below when I'm done this, and you can click on that and see the same type of plane I was flying. They have two Chipmunks there in the video. Steve was flying the other one. I was flying a different one there. But basically, what he was doing, that was pretty much like me on the weekend. So he did all the video, and I don't even have to do it. So editing's a real pain, but he's good at it. He used to do it professionally. I met him. I talked to Steve a few times. He's a good guy. So, anyways, yeah, I'll just kind of go through the chat here and see if there's any questions or anything, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Okay. Okay, it looks like Ranch was here and fixed up his screen. Very good. Okay, what else we got here? Yeah, Wrench makes a good point there about the fuel tank gauges being on each wing. It's like at least you know which tank you're looking at. Good point. Yeah. Unless you're one of those people that has to like, okay, which one? L for left. Okay, you ever do that trick? I know a buddy of mine. He's actually a training captain for an airline, and when he was first starting, he was flying for where was it? It was somewhere up north it was like a smaller charter airline kind of thing. And they said, okay, turn left to a heading of whatever. And he got his hand out here and he went, okay, boom, turn left. And then well, he was the first officer at that point. The captain says, like, did you just do what I think you did? He's like, yeah, that's how I remember what left is. The left hand looks like an L. So anyways, that's just got me thinking of something funny there. Thanks, Wrench. Okay. Oh, where are we here? Okay, so anyways, that's about it. Yeah, so this was kind of an airplaney kind of thing, but this is the superpilotish channel, and how can I make this more general? So I guess it would be don't be afraid to try something new, even though you're not like a total expert at it. You'll get it. I made a few mistakes on my little flight there, but it's something new, and I'll get the hang of it. And just like hopping in a new car, you're thinking like, okay, I know that there's a cruise control on it. Which little lever is the cruise control? Same thing in like a new airplane, you get that. And that's why all these airline guys do tons of training and simulators before they hop in and fly you around. So there we go. We're all safe around here. How's that sound? Okie doke. So here we go. Yeah, that's about it. So today's Monday, so I'll be back on Wednesday because I do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon Eastern. And yeah, we'll just kind of shut her down, and I'll put a link there to another little chipmunk video. You can see Steve flying around and Dave, and yeah, we'll just kind of shut her down. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.